Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Health and Safety Committee for November 18th. I'm Sylvia Ortiz, Chair, and also represent District 3. If you would, the other two council members would introduce themselves, that'd be great.
Mike Padilla, Council District 5.
Karen Hiller, Council District 1.
We have Liz and
I'm Luther Gagne. I'm the legal advisor for the police department.
okay, thank you. So now that the meeting has been called to order, we'll approve the October 14th minutes. I'd like to thank Mr. Padilla for stepping in for Mr. Mays. He said that I was going to pay him, but he misunderstood. Mr. Mays owes him, so when you see Mr. Mays, let him know that he owes Mr. Padilla big time.
Good deflect, I like that.
So the approval of October 14th minutes, has everybody had a chance to read them?
I did.
Since I was here, I'll move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
it's been moved and approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Raise your right hand. Okay, 3-0. Consideration of the partial ban with zones on camping ordinances. Before we get started, I thought Corey was going to be here. All right, let's do this. Absolutely, thank you. I don't have very many volunteers, so we're going to go ahead and get you up here.
So my name is Carrie Higgins. I'm the chair for the Homeless Task Force. And we did present this ordinance to the meeting this past Wednesday, and we voted on it. It was a very close vote, but the group did vote to support the ordinance.
Okay. I heard it was like
15 in favor, 14 wished to not take a stance, and 2 opposed it.
all right. And did the 2 that were opposed, did they say why they were opposed?
Not that I recall. Before we voted, we had probably about 30 minutes worth of discussion, pros, cons, other ideas and options. So they spoke up at that time, but I couldn't tell you what specifically they said. It would be in the minutes. I just don't have those
Okay.
with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nope.
Okay. Yes, Councilwoman Harrell.
I don't think I even had it yet when you had your meeting. So I had been worried about whether the task force would have it and have enough time to kind of process on it. When did your members all have it prior to your meeting?
Yes. So
Okay.
the city's legal department met with our department and asked if we would be willing to take it to the Homeless Task Force to see if we would support it. So it was emailed out Monday morning, and we asked our Homeless Task Force members to review it before the meeting on Wednesday so that we could discuss it and vote on it.
Good. And if, you don't need to repeat the whole meeting, but were there some comments that would be, I wanted to know in part on the 14, whether they hadn't had time to look at it or whether they just really didn't want to take a position. And then beyond that, whether there were some particular pro and con comments that would be helpful to us.
I think the majority of the 14 would have supported it with reservations. We had a lot of newcomers that weren't, because this has been an ongoing ordinance for about a year now, and so there's a core subcommittee that did some research, looked into some things, and we tried to express all of that to the other members. And so some of their ideas, a lot of the ideas were things that we had already looked into and researched and tried. Most of the 14 it was just reservations. How will this work? That kind of thing.
So kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of new to it is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Also.
Not all of them, but certainly some of them.
If I may, one more. I mean, do you think, this is really important.
Yes,
We'll talk about
absolutely.
it today. Do you think that with more time that would change, or that we just need to process how that implementation would go? And I'll tell you exactly why I'm asking, because I didn't know whether you'd seen it before or whether Mr. Burton and the advocates that have been so good that are actually have been in the homeless camps living in them had time to see them. Because if we felt kind of good about it, let's say, or had, kind of came to a meeting at the Mines, would want to make sure that we had had as much feedback as your group was likely to deliver before we actually sent it forward.
I don't think it would change
Okay.
with more, like I said, a lot of the comments were brought up were things that we had already discussed. We discussed it briefly at the Homeless Task Force Executive Committee, and we feel like it's a good compromise. It allows for camping, but it is still respectful to business owners, and it also protects the city's infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Just a quick one, but I think maybe you just answered it. Rather than why they didn't, why did those who supported it and voted, why did they like it? What did they see in the proposed ordinance that they felt comfortable with?
Again, I'm generalizing here a bit, but I think the majority of the people that supported it were the ones that were on the subcommittee or involved in this from the beginning. And so we've seen how far we've come. We've seen the compromise. We've seen the research that's gone into it. And we feel like that this is a good option.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. Sergeant Clam, what you got for me?
I just have a few updates on just the, general homeless population, and then with the encampment up north that we talk about most frequently during these meetings. The encampment back behind the mission, the population up there kind of ebbs and flows. I would guesstimate we're around 40 to 50 behind there. I think we were down, as low as 20 at one point, but the population's kind of gone back up. I know it's right around 2 weeks ago. I think we had around 15 new people show up down there. So that's still moving as far as the population goes. We still have the porta potties back there and the trash can. The porta potties are paid or being paid through December, and if I recall correctly, it's still by the I'm blanking, and I apologize, from the county health department, and that's going to be through the end of the year. There's no plan at this time that I'm aware of, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the beginning of the year, there's no plan as far as who might pay for those porta potties afterwards. So as of right now, that service might be going away. And then the only last thing I was going to mention, this one is still more a project in the works, but with the colder weather coming along, some of the campers back there are very, very ready for winter. They've winterized their structures or their tents. Some of them even have wood-burning stoves inside to stay warm, but there's a vast majority that have not yet. So a lot of us with different outreach programs are seeking some grants, and we're looking to potentially winterize some of their existing tents that the campers currently have, using different types of insulation and plastic sheeting to windproof and waterproof to the best we can, or at least make it more durable than what it is. Again, just with the intent to keep everybody alive through the winter and keeping all the fingers and toes on everybody. So we're still working on that. That's so much of a work in progress, but moving in the right direction. So be happy to stand for any questions you guys might have.
I would like to know, how is that going to work with putting a wood-burning stove or a stove in a tent?
Well, we don't do that, but
No, I know. Have you seen that, or?
yeah, so you're talking about a larger structure typically. You're not talking about like the two-person tent that some of the folks have. Those individuals, most of them have been back there for quite a while and have a larger, either a structure or just a large tent. And most of them made them out of either small barrels or 55-gallon drums, things like that. And then they have a chimney going out the top. So it's pretty ingenious. The folks back there are pretty crafty.
I'd like to commend you. I was meeting with the chief the day that you were giving out license, and I seen several people come in and go through the line, and they tried to grab me and give me a license there. I let them know I was just trying to see that, and they've got it pretty well streamlined. So thank you for continuing that. Are there any comments, questions? Karen?
Were you planning to ask Sergeant Clam about comments regarding this ordinance and the levees and rivers and
Sure.
things like that?
Sure, you can.
Yes, I can. Have you had a chance to read through the proposed final draft?
I have.
Ordinance?
Yeah, I've read through it.
Okay, could you share some thoughts? One of the big things that came up last time that nobody could answer was, for instance, the description of levees and river and what was safe and what wasn't, and
Yeah, I mean, the way I read that aspect, the levee to me is pretty clear. I mean, it's the dike, and so if anybody's sleeping on top of it, I think would be in violation. But I think the way I read it, and Luther would be a much better person to ask, I think the more heart of the ordinance as far as that goes, talks about some of the flood control devices. Like immediately I think of Walmart North, off to the east side of that, where that little creek is. There's like a small little structure down there. I assume it's a pump house or something. But that is, to my knowledge, a flood control device. So if you had a tent on it or around it, or if you just stored a lot of your camping gear around it where it could potentially clog it, then you're going to be in violation, things of that nature. I don't see a lot of people camping on levees. If they are, it's because they're underneath the bridge, which hits the other part of the ordinance. So I don't see that very often. But that's kind of how I interpreted it as far as what the flood control devices were.
okay. So, and I don't want to put you on the spot, you can pass on this, but do you think that this current proposal is, for lack of a better term, manageable?
I do. What this ordinance does is it gives the police department some clear guidelines on what the city deems acceptable and what it's not, and I think that's just all the police department has been looking for. This entire process is, just tell us what, black and white, what's good and what's not, and then we can kind of go from there. As far as the number of people this ordinance immediately would affect, I don't think it's a vast majority. We're probably talking less than 5% would be my guess. I mean, we don't have, and I'm talking citywide, to my knowledge, we don't have a ton of people actually living underneath bridges. We have a handful. I'd probably say 5, 10, something along those lines. And Dr. Burton might know a little bit different than I do as far as that goes, but right off the top of my head, and again, I can't think of a single person on a levee right now. So the bus depot, the bus stops, that's going to be a nightly kind of occurrence. I don't know of anybody who full-time camps out in one, but that doesn't mean people, like, as it gets cold, looking for windbreaks aren't going in there, so.
Okay, well, it seemed to me, I might be getting ahead of the discussion, that the staff did a really, really good job of kind of taking all the input from actually throughout the whole course and putting something together that I assume they think is all enforceable at this point. So it was important to me to hear from each of the parties that was involved, and you certainly, so.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for working on this, but just know your job is not done, and we know that too. Hopefully if there's anything else, and you can come back periodically and report to us, I think that would be great. One thing that this has done in committee is brought us all together, and we need to, I think, just continue that discussion to see how we can help.
I agree.
Before it gets out of hand, or it might be an easy fix as opposed to waiting several months and then saying, oh yeah, I needed that, or whatever.
I agree, and if I could, I don't, just kind of follow what Carrie was talking about. I do recall 2 things that they talked about in the meeting, if I could, as far as some suggestions throughout, because it was a long conversation. I just remember 2 specifically. One of the concerns was talking about if someone left their gear in the downtown area, especially around the new event center, is it going to be considered as abandoned and will be confiscated? And the suggestion got brought up, since it's still under construction, and I don't know if the city has this in plans or not, but any type of locker system. So if you are carrying around a backpack, and that goes for everybody, campers or not, but if, is it a way that they can maybe check it into a locker so they don't have to carry it around, but it won't, no fear of being confiscated? Something like that was suggested. And then there was also a suggestion if we're limiting, or in this case, if this ordinance is passed, banning camping in the downtown area, with the new event center going in downtown, if there's any type of revenue generated from that event center, is there any way that potentially the city could put away a small portion, 1%, whatever deemed appropriate, from those events that would specifically go to homelessness issues within our city?
That's a good thought.
Since we're not letting them in there, maybe we can work it to where they can get to where they actually can attend those events, something along those lines. But I just recall those were 2 issues that were brought up. So.
Those are good thoughts. Very good thoughts. because that is a concern of mine with it being new. They're not gonna want that, and they don't want it in downtown, and, so those are very good thoughts. To have some outdoor lockers. Yeah, we'll look into that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for all your hard work. Let's see, who else do I have out there? Speaker Rescue Mission? You wanna say anything? Can you come to the podium, please, for our people at home? Thank you. Like your shirt.
Thank you. I understand there's a game tonight.
I do too. What time, 7?
My name's Mark DeGroff. I work for Topeka Rescue Mission as a street reach director. So I go out and take cold bottles of water and hot cups of coffee to people who are unsheltered homeless in our community. I didn't come with prepared comments. I do understand that Barry voted for this in the Homeless Task Force Committee because of the good work that Sergeant Clam is doing. We wanted to support that. I will say that we support the city council. We do understand the perspective of private property owners' interests and liability concerns. We're very intimately familiar with that, and we also are at heart and at our core committed to serving unsheltered homeless. So I think it would be our encouragement that this be done correctly and be done very deliberately and done very, very well, so that we did all parties as much good as we could, and the unintended consequences or negative consequences of a new ordinance would be minimized as much as possible for all parties.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Any
taking this on.
questions or comments for Mr. Chief there? Hope we win tonight. Okay, let's see, who else is out there? Anybody else? Doctor, and I'm looking, come on. I'm thinking about your name here. I see you. Dr. Burton.
Hi, guys. Thanks for this opportunity here. Let me get organized here for a second. I did prepare just a couple of things, and I hope I don't go on too long here. I understand that we're dealing in politics here, and that you guys are politicians, and I appreciate that. And politics is the art of compromise. But I'm not a politician, so I'm a social worker and a researcher, and I work with the population with whom I'm obligated to advocate for, the street homeless. And while this is a good compromise, and I appreciate that the homeless community is very thankful that the ordinance is not as draconian as the previous drafts, and that is, that's fantastic news. However, the ordinance will still have a negative impact on the most vulnerable people of the street homeless. And those are the people that, and I know this is a sore subject with the city, the folks under the bridges and getting respite in the bus shelters. Those are the people that are the most vulnerable. They have the most problems in our community. They're not able to maintain a camp where they can go, and a tent where they can sleep. The bridges and the bus places are the only places and doorways are the only places that these folks can really go, because they can't maintain a home, they can't maintain a camp. So they don't need to be criminalized. They don't need to be fined. They don't need to be thrown in jail. They don't need more barriers to housing and more barriers to work, which is what this would ultimately do for some people. They don't need to put on a cycle of jail to street and jail to street. What they need is, they need a warming shelter, a cooling shelter somewhere. They need housing first, which the city is providing through me. I would just like to read you a few things so you guys can understand what Housing First does for a community, and please bear with me for a moment. The vast majority of individuals served by Housing First meet the definition of chronically homeless. Housing First can successfully house nearly all people with multiple diagnoses. All those encompass mental health disorders and substance use disorders and other health disorders. Accepts people into the program that are often rejected by other programs, such as the Mission or Vallejo. Can house people more quickly than other programs. because it doesn't require psychiatric treatment or drug and alcohol treatment. People relocate less often. They have greater residential stability. Housing First programs have high retention rates. We remain at 85+ retention rate. That's about the average for Housing First programs across the country. I don't know what the Missions is, but I know it's better than the Missions. I don't know what Vallejo's retention rate is, but I know it's better than Vallejo's retention rate. Let's see. Housing First services cost less than other residential services. Housing First, which includes housing subsidies, costs less than $57 a day. And it's and this is in New York, and it's $77 a day in a shelter in New York. I mean, it's 100 and what in county jail versus if we had a fully functioning, Housing First program, it would save a ton of money for the community. But we'll get to that, and let me just quickly skip through here. There's retention rates 88% versus 20% versus 30% in control groups that practice Housing First, practice regular housing. Here's where your cost savings comes in. Reduction in service use. Significant less time in psychiatric hospitals compared with other clients. And these are all research trials and so forth. Nearly 2 times as likely less likely to be hospitalized or use the emergency room. Decrease emergency room rates by 73%. Inpatient stays by 66%. Detox use by 82%. Let's see, supported housing, in the years prior to supported housing, former chronically homeless individuals spent 543 nights in jail. In hospital, 919 nights in jail, 170 emergency rooms. Now that's down to 140. It goes on and on and on. 50% reduction in jail use. Hospitalization fell by 77%. Visits to emergency rooms declined 83%. Psychiatric hospitalization down, police contacts down. And here's your money. Here's your savings. A pre-post study in Denver estimated enrollment in Housing First was associated with a net savings of $4,745 per person per year. A post-pre study in Rhode Island estimated that enrolling in Housing First was associated with a net savings cost of $8,839 per person per year. A pre-post study in Seattle estimated that Housing First programs there were associated with an aggregate reduction in cost of services of $3.2 million. A randomized trial in Chicago showed that the healthcare savings alone exceeded the cost of housing. And then we can talk about all sorts of quality of life outcomes, but I can share those with you, and I've shared those with you before, but I can talk to you about people who are getting on medication, hepatitis C medication that's life-saving for them. People are producing artwork. We get people going to doctors and getting appropriate health care. You got families that are being reconstituted because they have houses and they can get their kids back. You got people that are building furniture. You got grandkids visiting. You got people getting jobs. We're gonna be introducing peer-to-peer support here real quickly, and I'll finish with this. We've started a nonprofit, Second Chance Street Coalition. We're umbrellaed by the Community Resource Center. Community Resource Center, I'm sure you're familiar with, started Family Service and Guidance in this community. They started United Way. They're backing us, and we are umbrellaed by them. We are the only nonprofit dedicated to providing Housing First to the chronically street homeless. The city needs more shelter plus care vouchers is what the city needs before we can really effectively move forward. And finally, I just want to say thank you to the subcommittee. Karen Hiller, I've enjoyed working with you, and I want to give a special thanks to Chair Ortiz, because if it wasn't for the work of this subcommittee, the Second Chance Street Coalition wouldn't exist, and the stuff that you guys have supported, that we've changed the lives of 35 people forever. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing work. And if it wasn't for the subcommittee poking and prodding around and getting people irritated, it wouldn't have happened. And I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Chair Ortiz.
Thank you.
Any questions you guys have?
Any questions? Any questions? Please.
Just a comment. Thank you so much. You called me early. I haven't been on this committee the whole time, but wanted to know if you could do something. I served on the homeless task force for over 30 years, been there, get it. We all know that the way to fix these problems is, in a way, there has to be this dynamic of kind of some push and pull, and you said it better than I ever will. I remember too, years ago now, at the homeless task force meeting, and we were talking about what to do with the rescue mission and what to do. Cornerstone had just started, and that Topeka City Homes was new, and it was like, what do we do? And Barry himself drew this big square on the wall, or rectangle, and then a little tiny square in the middle. And he said, we have to remember that no matter what we do, homelessness should always, we don't want to institutionalize that. It should be this small place that we are working to have that ladder of services and housing options to help people if they have been X place and have fallen back, to help them back out or to help them up for the first time. And your efforts and those of the folks down on the river, really, the homeless folks that have developed that coalition themselves, so I want to give you all credit. One of you is behind Christy, but have made those changes. I too really appreciate Councilwoman Ortiz's leadership in saying we need to give it time and let you all and let the homeless task force work on how to, and certainly the neighborhood relations staff, Corey and Sasha, coming up with, partnering up with the Housing First program, and you've made it work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. One of the homeless folks, McCall, nicknamed me Dr. Glue, so I'm very proud of that. But
Now
go
that
ahead,
I
Sharon.
can remember, Dr. Glue, and all the hard work, all the hard work that you've done with transporting and everything. Like I said, this committee will continue on, and we look for more good things to come.
Well, I can tell you guys have changed, and I know Dan, you can speak to it too. You guys have changed things down on the river, and Clem too, of course. You guys have changed things down on the river tremendously. There's a lot of support down there. There's a lot more resources and stuff than there was, before you guys got started. So you really have. And if you want to know, Chair Ortiz, how to put a wood-burning stove, or you want one installed in your house,
Hey, there you go.
Hillbilly can do it right there. He'll be glad to do it for you.
Now I can remember that too. Thank you.
You betcha.
One other, just, and you can stay, but it sounds a combination of your testimony, and I appreciate your advocacy, and Sergeant Clam's and the Homeless Task Force, is that there aren't many people who are going to have, now that we've gotten all the way through this, there aren't many people who are going to have to change their choices.
You're talking
And then-
probably, like Clem said, less than 10 probably.
And they can figure it out. And somebody who sits in a bus shelter for a while can, move on in terms of staying there, setting up housekeeping there and so on. But it sounds like, relatively speaking, it can be manageable. And maybe if we need loggers downtown, just for anybody who wants to stash their stuff, if people aren't going to be staying downtown, maybe they can, that's just a transition, or can get their stuff someplace else. So it sounds like we have solutions for that remaining little group of challenges.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very good compromise that meets the need for the city, and there's a few folks that it will negatively impact, but all in all, I know you guys have constituents that you have to speak to and answer to, and you have the businesses that are have legitimate concerns. So as I was explaining to Hillbilly and I were talking about it at one point, and we were talking about the no infrastructure, camping and stuff like that, and Hillbilly said, hell, that's just being polite, so.
Thank you.
So, all right.
Well, hopefully this will force them into doing something and letting them know
too.
that they have to do something, whether it's get somewhere or get on medicine or get the medical help that they need. And then hopefully we'll deal with the ones that are, to me, I don't know, but it seems like that are slim and few, that hopefully we can help them.
Yeah, there are some folks. I mean, Clem knows the folks and how vulnerable they are, and I know he cares desperately about trying to get them help. But sometimes there's just
Yeah.
folks that you try to reach and try to reach and try to reach, and I've been trying to reach Laura for over a year. And I got high the other day instead of go take a hike. That's not exactly the words that she uses, but so I'm making progress. But there's some folks you just can't reach, and they'll get bounced around from spot to spot, you know, but hopefully there won't be many of that. We won't get into something like in Denver, or wherever, where we're chasing, you know, hundreds of homeless around the city, so. All right,
Thank you.
thank you, guys.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Anybody else that would like to speak? Okay. Is there committee members that would like to speak on this consideration of the partial ban with zones? Are there any questions that you have for legal?
I only had one.
Sure, Karen?
I wondered if,
Just a comment.
pardon?
Nothing.
Go ahead.
I think it's the police that keep this list. We, because of issues with access to certain properties before, be they vacant or otherwise, we have developed a list of, I think it's mostly landlords, but also property owners in general, who have given blanket permission that if something comes up in this property, you have my permission to enter. Is that for vacant properties, Mike or Sergeant? I know that there is one that was developed, and I thought it was through code, where if they've got a problem property, they get the owner to just say, if you need to go on there, you go. And I just wondered if a property like that, a standing list, if there were private owners, now that this has changed, if there were private owners that absolutely, you know, maybe they're local, maybe they're far away, but they do not want camping on their property, whether there could be a standing list of people who, from the private sector, that definitely didn't want. Or it could be other government sector for that matter. We're just controlling our public land.
Well, I'm not aware of a standing list. That may have been something we've used in the past, but I don't believe currently right now that police at least are not using anything like that. The difficulty with a standing list is keeping it updated.
Understood.
You know, maybe property changes hands or is sold or something like that, or even if you've got a property owner giving somebody special permission on the side and making sure that the police department are operating with the most up-to-date current information. It's really challenging when you build it around a list like that. Keeping it updated is just difficult.
Okay. I think actually it's the CPOs that have done that. I'm sure it was in collaboration with code. You know, some of those are more short-term, of course, where you're really working on a property or a block or something. Okay, well, I'm sure that situationally that can occur. I just wanted to see if there was a possibility for a standing
It can.
list.
I mean, we certainly do that all the time when we have a particular situation that is being problematic, where officers will reach out to the property owner specifically
Yeah.
and make them aware of what the problem is.
Right.
And kind of get some direction from
Where
the owner.
people are staying in properties and stuff like that, I know.
Yeah.
Central Topeka, I'm familiar, just saying. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Mr. Padilla?
Just a quick comment. I want to thank the chair for allowing me to sit in on the meeting. I was on this committee last year and then rotated off. So it's encouraging to see that the work continued and it wasn't rushed so that it got done before the end of the year, before the next committee people came on board, and that it continued to be investigated, as it were, for all the options available, and that I see all the work that Luther's done. I appreciate that, Luther. That's a task when people say, well, we ought to be able to do this or that without knowing all the legal ramifications of those comments. But it is worthy of note, I think, for the chair to have kept this moving forward and to make the progress that you have. When I was asked to sit in, I got the updates and read through them and everything, and I liked what I saw. I really thought that showed a lot of good effort and concern for this situation, because I traveled during the summer like most of us have, and in every city I went to, I saw homeless people. And so it's not a unique situation to Topeka, but not knowing what their approach is, I was glad to come back to Topeka knowing that the work continued to try and find a compromise here that will fit us. So congratulations to the committee that served during this year of 2019, and to you, Chair, for doing such a good job. and to Luther and the staff for working so closely with you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for coming back to finish it up. That's kind of nice. Having said all that, City Manager, can we get this on before the end of the year? You know, I'm sorry. I just hate to see new people come on and come back and they want time to study it and all that, and
Right now, your 90-day report is actually due December 3rd.
okay.
So if the committee were today be willing to move forward the partial ban as it's proposed in option C there, if that's what you so choose, then we would be able to add that to the agenda for council to take action at that meeting, if at all, we would have it there available to them. You would have your report first listed and then action, recommending action on this item.
Okay, thank you. You're one step ahead of me. Luther, the only thing I wanted to know is, so if we pass this, or I guess it won't be passed until we take it back to the council,
Yes, ma'am.
how soon will the signs go up, like under the bridge and different areas? I don't know if somebody's,
Signs up under the bridges already, most,
We've already,
I'm aware of, I don't know,
the Kansas Avenue Bridge has some signs posted on it already, prohibiting trespassing from underneath the bridge, and that was directly in response to the fire that we had under
Right.
there. This ordinance is not going to result in signs being posted. The mention of notices relates to storage of personal property, that if there's some property left by somebody or stored in a place that's covered by this, then we have to post a notice, giving them 24 hours to remove
Okay.
it.
okay.
But we're not going to go out and post signs.
Okay, all right. All righty, that's all I have. Is that it, everybody? What's your pleasure? Yes,
The staff was so thorough this time that in
Yes.
tab 6 of our booklet, we have alternative language for options listed.
oh, they sure is.
And they further recommend option C, which would take this current proposal forward. So if, it sounds like we have consensus here, I would move option C, which says to recommend that the governing body adopt the draft ordinance as amended, the one that we have today.
Partial ban with established no camping zones.
Correct.
Okay, so that's your motion,
It is.
okay, to adopt that?
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, it's 3-0. Now, do we need to make a motion, Luther, to send this back to committee, or will this automatically go back?
What?
Okay, so we can move on? Okay, so we're good. Okay, you just said that to me. I just want to make sure I don't.
I'll work with staff to make sure it gets on the agenda.
Okay, just want to make sure that I get it out of here correctly. Again, thank you for your time and your patience. This is just an ever, never-ending story that we can continue to work on, to see what new comes up or what different ideas we think. I'm grateful for all the stakeholders that we have that are in the audience as well, because that's really what this takes for our homeless task force, is everybody to be involved and to play whatever part they have. Okay, number 5, and yes, staff did a great job on this, Luther. I don't know if you or Lisa did it, but you guys did a great job. Karen Hiller called me screaming after Tuesday's meeting, and I didn't know what was wrong with her, so she wanted me to go get my book and the code, and I told her I'd do it the next day, but it was very well done. Okay, number 5. Whoa. So the consideration of the partial ban with zones was number 3. Number 4 is the motion to refer proposed camping ordinance to the governing body. with recommendation to either adopt or withdraw the ordinance. So it does look like,
Yeah.
okay.
I think so.
Was that your intent?
I didn't look at the agenda, but yes.
Well, I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Let's just go ahead and make that motion again, just to make sure, if you would, Karen.
A lot of work, I already full.
Well, it just says with the recommendation to adopt or withdraw the ordinance, and, well, I guess that is what we did. Yeah, you're right. Okay, we're gonna go on. All right, I just don't wanna go backwards. Okay,
Chair,
Yes.
before everybody goes, I asked the city manager this morning, we had a companion ordinance sort of running with this one that was supposed to be perhaps on deck for this committee later. If and when we got done with this one, I wondered if it would be all right for the city manager to address right now what he had in mind for what we might call the panhandling ordinance.
Thank you, Councilwoman Heller. Yes, I have staff working to bring the pedestrian safety ordinance up to the correct code. In other words, they're reviewing, looking at the different intersections, the language. We've had some discussion about removing the box, which was part of the old one. And so they're redrafting that ordinance now. And once they have it redrafted, we'll be looking to try and set up a quick committee meeting of the committee that was chaired by Councilman Jensen and get his committee to decide whether they support the language that staff will draft. It'll be similar to what was originally proposed, but there are some modifications due to the time frame that's transpired since the last consideration. So we'll be hopefully bringing that back soon. That does not need to hold this up whatsoever. We can move this forward without that being completed, but we also know that they both start at the same time. We've been waiting. Now it's time to bring that one back
yeah,
too.
they're waiting on us, yeah. Thank you. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, property maintenance, you're on deck. Current policies and procedures. Who do we have? Is that you? You're in the hot. Mr. Haugen? Are you you need me to move?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We got a little technical difficulty getting here we go. All right, so what you asked for us to present this time was on sanitation of one of the steps or one of the things that we do. And so we pulled apart sanitation, which happened to be our RPI process as well. So it was a good one to start with. There are three types of sanitation issues: an exterior, which an occupant or an owner are responsible for; an interior is usually an occupant's responsibility; and road and harborage, which is an owner's responsibility. These are not all inclusive, but here's a lot of the things that sanitation involves: tires, trash and debris, brush piles, upholstered furniture, appliances, scrap lumber, scrap metal, scrap auto parts, stagnant water, plumbing fixtures, cardboard boxes, and things that people just throw out into their yard and don't take care of. Road and harborage is any condition which provides harborage for rats, mice, and snakes or other vermin and or insect infestation, conditions which are unsightly and are not intended for outdoor use, that are not weather tight and aren't suited for outdoor conditions, and any condition which creates a public health or safety hazard in relation to rodents. This is a basic process that we go through, a real quick one, and then I'm going to go through it step by step. But the complaint, the inspection, the violation notice, the reasonable time given to comply, which is 13 days from mailing, owner has the opportunity for a hearing, posting can be required, and I'll explain that in a little bit, re-inspection for compliance and non-compliance, obtain a warrant that abate the property and bill the property owner. For complaints, it's either complaint-driven or survey-driven. We respond to telephone calls, see, click, fix, email complaints, and also personal contacts where people tell us what the issue is. Our goal is to do an inspection with 48 hours of being notified. Right now, I have it about 34% of our cases are complaint-driven. I would say that is skyrocketed with See, Click, Fix and the success of See, Click, Fix, but I don't have the numbers right now. But it's changing the strategy of how we enforce, because we're so preoccupied with see, click, fix cases now and responding to those, that it cuts into the proactive enforcement, which is fine. We're still responding to complaints, and that's a good thing. And then survey and monitor properties for compliance is 66% of the cases. The results, when a violation is found, we notify the property owner through the legal written process. The inspection and documentation is on MyGov. I'm going to walk over here to the computer. I'd like to open up the page for MyGov for you guys to actually see
Okay.
what our program is, because it's kind of cool to see the first part of it. I don't want to go too far into it, but you can at least see. And it provides a step-by-step process, and every single step is logged into like it tells you. So if the step is due, it tells the person that it's due, and that way we know who's responsible for what. Okay, so the first thing we have, this is like just a dashboard that shows us what to do. And if you look on the left, it tells who's responsible for what. Like A is for abatement crew, MC is for the mowing crew, and the O's are for officers. If I happen to have something up, there would have been something for me as well, but there's nothing that I have to do. And if you look over to the right, it shows you the inspector's caseload. If you see where the mouse is, that's how many cases that inspector is handling. And this is how many things that he has to get done today. So what he's doing right now, he's out proactively enforcing because he's caught up. And it'll vary every single time. If you can look down at this one, she still has 19 things that she's got to follow up on before she even starts to consider getting very proactive. But she's got to knock those out. She'll do some proactive work when she's standing at one house and sees a violation at another house. But you can imagine sometimes they'll walk in and that number's 50. And on the weekend when they left, it was at 0. And it's just how the case is run. But this is able for the supervisors to manage and see how the inspectors are. And I'll pull up a random case. Let me pick hers. Oh, maybe I won't. Okay. Let's see this. Okay, so I'm going to pick just a random case on it so you can kind of see the step-by-step. So this is where it would have started, the initial inspection. The inspector would get notified on their iPad that there's an initial inspection. They go out, they do the inspection. They take photographs of it and they write down the violations. So there's the violations, there's the pictures of the violations. I can make the pictures bigger, but just so that you guys have a concept of what's going on. And then that's the violations that were at that house. Let me go back to the active case. And as soon as she does that, then it's going to drop down to for the notification process. And our staff that's in the office will get notified every single day. Here are the things you have to do. So they will turn around and they will mail out the notices. Once they mail out the notices, they click their little button, and then it's reinspection time. This sits at yellow until the day shows up. So on December 2nd, that thing's going to pop green. And remember when we were on that scorecard and I showed you the things the inspector has to do for the day? It'll drop into that inspector's things to do for the day. So this is a really simple system that helps us stay track, helps management follow how the cases are going, and nothing seems to get lost in the shuffle on this. So we're really happy with the system. It works really well. The reports that we're able to produce come out outstanding on this.
Could you go back to that?
I hope I can. I don't know now.
Sorry.
I think I just closed it, so how would I do that?
There's a back button.
Well, where do you see
Oh,
back?
that's your button.
Because I'm walking through it where I don't want to be walking through it. Hold on. Please.
There you go.
There.
Maybe the supervisor needs training. Maybe that's the breakdown.
You count on them to be trained.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
got
I closed it out before she asked. So where is it that you would like to go?
Well, you all, this is a lot of information and it's a little fuzzy for me to read actually, so I was
Sure.
trying to keep up with you. One of the things that in my opinion you all do really well is take a list with you of community resources. And I was starting to look at the checkoffs underneath that first inspection and it looked like that was even a checkoff And I,
Oh, I don't know if that's a checkoff. I mean, that's part of the package we put together. Let me pick another one out. Wish I could remember the same one I did, but I'm trying to pick one far enough down.
there you go. So emergency securement, public service, community resource, I
Yes.
didn't know,
So all those things light up and tell you what you're supposed to do.
oh, I see.
So on this violation, if it needed a door hanger, that would be
A door,
covered?
sure, a door hanger is an option that they can
Right.
use. Sometimes we don't use door hangers. Usually we don't, but we do when we can see that it'd be a wise thing to do. They would actually click on door hanger to tell you we left the door hanger on this given date.
So on community resource, what happens? Does that mean you
For-
gave them a referral?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, so it walks all the way through the entire thing, including prepare warrant. It'll pop up green, this time to prepare the warrant, time to do all this, all the way through the entire thing. I don't mean to move it on you. But it's a step-by-step, everybody knows what they have to do. And if it's the front desk staff person, that scorecard that we saw shows that they have to do those things, and it tells them, so they don't get missed, they don't get lost. The inspector doesn't sit on a case and not know what's going on with the case, because this thing's saying, hey, you got a green light, it's time to act on the case.
So, are you through, Karen? I'm sorry.
I think so. I mean, I'll just make a comment, and then, you know, one of the things that I will have questions and concerns about, just wanting to know a number of things about how this is actually working, but I've always been pretty amazed at how many cases the inspectors were able to handle, and this helps explain a lot of that, because that's awesome.
In the summer, it could pile up to 400 cases per inspector that they're juggling, and those all, the due date is never a set date, because a housing case is different than a sanitation case. So there's times that 30 will pop up in a day. There's another time that it'll be 0. So you don't know what's going to pop up in the day that you have to take care of it. You go, why is that inspector just going call to call to call? Well, it happened to pop up to 30.
That's impressive. Thank you. I'm fine.
So Mike, can you go back to the screen you were just at, or try,
Let's see, which one was I at?
with all the inspectors?
Oh, the scorecard. Okay, sure.
Is that the scorecard?
No.
This one here.
Okay, so I'm looking at my inspector's load, and I know Megan, because she's in Oakland and East, and I think some in North. And I'm looking at, she has 19 jobs to get done today, correct? That's
Yeah,
what
or-
she has to get done.
If she doesn't get them done, they roll over to tomorrow.
Okay. I guess with the people that have 0, I guess I'm looking at, so you just answered my question, I was just looking at, does she have to get it done? And if she does, what about my people with 0?
Okay,
Can they help her?
right, sure, yes, they can. They have to be at 0 right now. If I open this up tomorrow, they might be at 15.
No, I understand
So-
that, but I'm saying, we're talking today, this is an early morning, we just got to
Right.
work, Megan's got 19. My biggest thing is, how come the people with 0 can't help her, so we get it all done, as opposed to letting it
We
roll over?
we all do work together. If you look at John Chardines, he's at, I can't read that, 8? He's on vacation.
Okay.
So they're
Those
going
gals
over there.
might be out too.
Yeah, and they're taking care of his, so that's why. They'll go in and do that, but you have an area that you're responsible for as well, that you have to be proactive as well. And if you get to 0, that is your opportunity to be proactive and go strategically look at a neighborhood and start in that neighborhood block by block. If every time you get to 0, you run over and do somebody else's.
Well, I'm not saying everybody, but what I'm saying is, I don't know who works out west, but let's say they're at 0, and they can maybe they're at 0, they can help out. And I'm not
Right.
even saying
When-
that they have to take, the half of it. I'm just like, maybe, hey, I'm gonna help you out, Megan, I'm gonna take 3.
When an inspector starts to become overwhelmed, that's exactly what they do. They all pull
Okay.
together and say, hey, let's get together and get that person back to 0. Now,
And how do I know, because I want to see that teamwork. I want to make sure that, because that to me burns out our inspectors.
absolutely.
Because I know we have, on the east side, we have a lot of violations. I mean, I get that. And I've always said that. On other sides, we don't have as many as we do on another certain part of town. So how do I know that this person's on vacation? How do they know that within each other? Because it doesn't say, it'd
Well,
be nice if it said vacation or.
There is a staff of 9 inspectors, but 8 that do this. One that does special structures, Larry Johnson. That's why his is going to be lower. He does demolitions. So that's why his numbers are so much lower, because he's not doing code enforcement per se, he's doing demolitions. But we all come to work at 8 o'clock. We all know who's there and not there. Not only that, there are so many important things that we have to do daily that we have to do, that if we take a day off, we have to let everybody know we're not going to be here, so they can come back behind and take care of it, from getting a warrant over to the judge, from serving our paperwork on somebody's house every single day. So teamwork is one of the key things that we have to do. And when we talk about the size of area, the areas are intentionally reduced in the areas of need. And I only have 2 areas west of Burlingame, period, just 2 inspectors. And those inspectors end up being just as busy, if not busier, because they have a massive amount of windshield time, driving out to 10th and Urish and then coming all the way back to Burlingame. And even though they strategically put it out during the day, they don't strategically put C-click fixes out during the day. When somebody calls and they're bouncing around chasing those, they're doing a lot of drive time, and they're not sitting at 0. You're sitting at 0 now because you're in November. Had we done this in July, you'd go, how come there's a guy with 100 follow-up cases? And this is going to be our slow time for the next 4 months. And this is when we decided to go active on housing cases and send that courtesy letter that we do, that where we don't open a case, but we tell you you have a violation. We decided to do it in this time because this is the only time that the inspectors have any breathing room.
So, and I'm glad to see that they're doing teamwork. So, again, I'll start with Megan. So, any one of them, Megan's gone today, they have the ability to go in one of her jobs and pull it open and see what it needs, or?
Yes, they do.
They have that?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And we don't want to do that all the time, because you want one inspector working their case. It's their caseload.
Right.
But when an inspector starts to become overwhelmed, or when an inspector says, I'm gone for 2 weeks, then other inspectors and the supervisor go out and take care of their stuff, so that when they return to work, they're at 10 instead of 100.
Well, and I'm looking at just vacation, medical
Yeah,
leave, or
everything.
any of that, because, we can't just have one person just sitting there. I mean, things happen, or if they quit,
Absolutely.
or whatever. Okay.
No, I've had some people have some issues that have taken them away from the job,
Right.
got rear-ended, like creamed and was in rehab. That person's area went open. I have another one where I have an open territory. So that open territory is being fulfilled by all these inspectors. They're taking care of that territory until I get somebody hired.
And Mike, that is so good to hear, because we hear that over and over and over again. We don't have a inspector for this area. Our inspector's hurt. Our inspector's out. Who's covering the jobs? We hear that time and time again. And so that's so good to hear that other ones have access to their cases.
Absolutely.
And that they're being handled, to go back and educate, the NIAs or the constituents, because they believe they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
I don't even think they know about this.
And I never really thought about it, but before this software program, when I first started, we were paper.
Yeah.
So I had this nice organized file of all of our cases. Had I been sick, nobody would have got into my paper file system, because it's my system and they wouldn't have understood what's due, and et cetera. So this is a really good thing that came out of working with MyGov, that they can look out and take care of each other. And like I say, I have an outstanding crew that every day look out for each other. And even with 30 years at the police department, the staff that I have in there is some of the finest and most caring staff members. And I've had some great units over at the police department. This is one of the finest, most outstanding groups that actually cares. And they went from, feeling run down to actually believing that they're making a difference with what they're doing. Because I talk to them all the time. I said, look, out of any other department in this city, you actually control quality of life, and you can help the quality of life within the city. And when someone drives into the city, you make more impact than almost anybody. And you guys are important people, and they believe it. You can see that they're believing it, and that's a big turnaround from when I started. Because even when I first started, I went, "Whoa, this is not very fun." There's a lot of attacking going on. So.
City Manager, if I may, I think this would be a good educational tool when they come up and present to show the public, because I don't know about this, but I'm just one person. but so that people will see that we do have a better handle than what we do. I don't know, would you like to say anything, or Mike, you have anything?
No, I agree. I think it shows the efficiencies that oftentimes they're criticized, and there's not been a way to visually respond. And this puts it out there. I think it's a good idea to.
Sure, it also helps with that consistency and training. And working with the prosecutor and working with the judge, who only one judge reviews the warrants, which I'll get to in a little bit. But when we do have issues that we're not writing it consistently, those are called out. They're going, look, you're not doing it the way you should. And then we all meet and we sit down and go, this is the expectation of how you're supposed to do things. And so it really helps because it's constant training. This is constant training. The acceptance or denial of a warrant is constant training that we have. When we don't want any denials of a warrant, because that means that we did something that didn't meet the judge's expectation or the prosecutor. We got 1% now, and usually it's because the judge goes, I really don't want to sign a warrant for this. Not because we weren't right, he just doesn't like it. And that's okay, the judge can do that, and we want him to do that. So it's turned out to be a really good system.
And then all of the supervisors and the upper management can get in there and do what they need to do.
They are all, yeah, every single one of us is named right here, except for one supervisor, and that's only because she's on the paperwork part of it, but all her stuff pops up. She has it too. Everyone has access. Every single person in our staff has full access to this. I don't want to say full access because I have more access than an inspector. Inspector can't go in and move things or change things, which is really important. And I'm going to jump ahead in my presentation, but on a sanitation case, we give them 10 days. If somebody calls and says, look, I need some more time because this is just too big for me, the inspector has the authority to give one extension of up to 10 days. If they want another extension, they got to contact me, the inspector, and explain why. But they're even not to give those 10 days unless there's a true plan of action or significant progress. Because some of them are so bad, or some of them are in a situation where we don't want to say absolutely no, you can't have an extension. But, or someone said, look, I'm in New York and I won't be home for 15 days, and I promise on the 15th day I'm going to do it. But sure, we'll work with you. We'll do that because it makes no sense not to. Am I cool with closing that?
Yep, continue on. Thank you.
Yeah, I will shrink it instead of
There you
close it.
go.
All right, so I'll go back to. I think I have it. So yeah, that's the software program we use. So in a sanitation case, 13 days are given to abate the violation from the date of the letter. And it is on the letter from the date we mail it, and then a date specific of what day you have to have it done. And that's something that you all passed, I think earlier this year, time flies, giving us this. On or after the 14th day, we re-inspect the property, and if the property is still in violation, a warrant is applied for. An inspector is willing to work with the owner, that it makes a diligent effort to address the issue. That's what I just talked about a moment ago. And warrants are submitted on Monday and approved on Tuesday. The abatement team then and the inspector coordinate, and they work it out so that that warrant is served within 96 hours. We have up to 30 warrants per week. So you can imagine what we have and how long that takes, and that we have to coordinate it. When we send a violation notice to a property owner, we provide the description of the address, the description of the violation. We give photos of some of the violation. We don't give photos of all because we can't see a backyard from public access. Designated date in the notice to have the violation abated, so that gives a date specific and tells them when you better get it done. The property owner may appeal the violation, and that appeal date is on the notice. So they have 10 days from that to call and say, I want to request a hearing because we believe you've interpreted the code incorrectly. Or there's 3 different ways, and I'll get to that too. But they have an opportunity for a hearing. And then there's a statement that if it is abated, the city may impose penalties and abatement charges against the owner. And then the one that gets people the most upset is that failure to comply could result in prosecution and municipal court. And even though it doesn't look good that we say you can spend up to 6 months in jail and you could be fined this, you need to know that.
Yep.
It'd be a nice little shock to find out you're going to jail, which we don't put very many people in jail for these. They're usually the ones that tell the judge what they think of them. and then they get to go to jail, but we don't send them to jail for the simple violation or not getting the violation done. Reasonable time is given to comply. State law allows 10 days for a sanitation violation. That's up to 10 days. When we send notice, we give 13 days because we took into consideration mailing. No one's going to get this for at least 3 days. So we gave 13 days so that if it takes 7 days to get there, they still have time as outlined by state law to get it cleaned up. If an owner contacts an inspector requesting additional time, the inspector will work with the owner as long as there is a plan of action or diligent effort is being made. And like I said before, first extensions normally do not exceed the 10 days, because if state law is saying it needs to be cleaned within 10 days, it doesn't seem prudent to put it another extension beyond 10 days. But if we get to a point where they go, look, it's a 20 days in and they've cleaned half of it, something's going on, then what the inspector does is they come into my office and go, Mike, this is why I want to give it another extension. And I go, okay, let me see your pictures. You articulate it, put it in your case notes, explain why, and I will support it. There's some that it's very valid to do that.
Mike, I would like to see a copy of the letter. It doesn't have to be this go-around, but if you
Sure.
can bring it to the next go-around. I get so many calls, and they're like, I don't know what number to call.
Okay.
They don't have a number to call back. They don't have an inspector.
Yeah.
They don't have,
I-
what the violation is. And I've seen those letters. Well, I seen one. And I mean, I get that all the time, but I would just like a copy of that so I could have and say, well, it's right there. And it's, and
I would be happy to, and I'll
and
send
that's
you.
why sometimes I intervene, because they'll call me and say, hey, this guy, blah, 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 or whatever.
Right.
Or they don't have the letter with them when they call me.
I will have one. I'll send you one. We'll redact out the case information, and I'll redact it out because it has the inspector's name, the inspector's phone number. It has our address. It tells them that they have this long to appeal it. I get calls just like you all the time. These people go, well, I don't know what to do. And then I look, and they've had 13 cases on
Yeah.
their property. And I go, this is the fourth time I've talked to you, and you've played that you don't know what to do all those times. We've explained to you what you need to do. As a matter of fact, I got one, since 2018, he has had 15 cases of sanitation on his property. He goes out and he buys stuff at the garage sale, and he just puts it in the driveway, and then I didn't get the pictures in, it's coming up, but I wanted to show you that we cleaned it on like November 3rd, and on November 10th is our next case. We started it all over again because he put it out. He calls, he goes, hey, I'm never going to do this again. I promise, promise, promise. He keeps forgetting that he calls me, and he promises, promises, promises.
And not only that, I wanted to see the letter because some people will say they don't know what the violation is, and
You will get to see all that. I was going to pull one up when we were there, except for that gives the person's name, their address.
Right. No, you're fine.
And so I
You're fine.
didn't want to do that.
Okay.
What it does is pops the boilerplate language out of the ordinance. It's not customized for them, is that right?
No. So it does. It pops the boilerplate, and then it gives a semicolon.
Gives you a
And
chance.
then
Right.
the inspector writes, and that's what we meet with the prosecutor and say,
Good.
what do we want in there that will meet the guidelines, and explain it. The prosecutor goes, I want this, this, and this for me to agree with you. So we're working with city legal and saying, what do you want in there so that you will support us, so that when we apply for a warrant, you're going to say yes. And so that's those things that we've worked on. So it's not just boilerplate, it's customization of what your problem is, that you have a washer and dryer in the yard, that you have car parts, scrap metal, et cetera.
Okay, go ahead, Karen.
I'll have questions like this, but since we're on this kind of frequent flyer, I call them, example, where the guy, just is a hoarder or collector and he just can't stop himself from replacing. Does he abate himself? And either way, are you charging him the penalty fees, and is he paying them?
Okay, so no matter who it is, if you clean it before we clean it, there is no bill.
Gotcha.
So it is free.
Uh-huh.
Are they paying them? Yes, not everybody, obviously. There are people that don't pay and don't care. We have a lot of properties that are zombie properties that the landlord lives wherever, or there is none. With Councilwoman Ortiz, she was talking about a lawn mowing issue. We found out how old were the people that own that property, 110 and 119 years old. They're not here anymore.
Yeah.
And nobody's here. So, yeah, that one, we keep going to mow. But we also notify Shawnee County Appraiser to put it on the tax sale, or Shawnee County Legal to put it on the tax sale. I don't know if they're gonna put a vacant lot at the corner of some street that, who's gonna want it on this tax sale, but we notify them. So are they getting paid? A percentage is getting paid. I could tell you the percentage of what we send out and what we collect next time.
Good, I'm interested in that.
And that came about, that was really weird, because I've lived at my house for almost 30-some years, and that came about. Mike lived over there at one time, and that my neighbor keeps that area just immaculate. I mean, and then he got mad. He's like, I've been doing this for 30-some years, and they have never offered me a dime, and so he quit cutting it, and I'm like, Mike, this grass is like knee-high. I went and asked him why he wasn't cutting it. He's like, I'm tired. They couldn't even say thank you. Jesus, so.
Yeah, they were saying thank you because they've already had their.
Yeah, they pay their tax.
Yeah, and the taxes, I think, on that one might be being paid, so it's gonna be a family member that lives in Colorado.
Yeah.
But that family member doesn't care and isn't gonna come back for this, nor have they
It's
done
not getting billed.
Yeah, nor have they done a probate for us to say, you have a vested interest, and it's a small little piece of property. How far do we go? Especially when your neighbor was mowing it the whole time. We were thinking, God, this is a great neighborhood. They're mowing it, and we're really happy with them. So he kind of knows now, either he mows it or we come mow it. And if he wants to make it look nice, he's got a piece of property nobody's going to say, get off my lawn, because they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
So a property owner has a right to a hearing. They can request a hearing within 10 days of the notice. The hearing date and time are scheduled, mailed, or given by personal service to the property owner if the property owner comes in here to present their hearing request. The hearing officer will affirm, modify, or reverse a decision by a code official by determining, and this is the three things you can have a hearing for: the violation was served correctly, provisions of the chapter 8.60 apply, and requirements cannot be adequately satisfied by other means. And at times they can be satisfied by other means, with a guy just saying, look, the Boy Scouts are coming to help me finish this up, but I can't have them do it until September 3rd. Well, that adequately satisfied it, even though he went beyond his time, it was going to be satisfied. And then the hearing officer's outcomes are a continuance, waive or uphold fees, or order an abatement.
So just to clarify,
Okay?
so the way you're reading it and the way you're implementing the code is that in the case of sanitation, I know the numbers will change, but the inspector gets to write it up. They, to some extent, modify what day the letter gets sent based on either when they get to it or something like that. And then they can give one extension. If there's more than that, it goes to you, in this case, the supervisor, and you actually can give pretty much unlimited extensions if you want to. So it only goes to the hearing officer if you're kind of done with this property.
No.
Okay.
So
No.
you're the first part that you talked about is absolutely correct. I guess I could extend them and haven't. The hearing occurs when they fill out a request for a hearing. So I'll work with you as an inspector, and you go, look, I'm gonna get it next weekend, I promise. I go, all right, you know what, we'll put this case out until next week before we follow up. We're gonna work with you. That's how that would work. A hearing is, you have 10 days to request a hearing to argue that we interpreted the code correctly, it doesn't apply, or there's another way to do it. So that's a completely different thing. Once it goes to a hearing officer, the hearing officer can give them an extension. They can say, get it clean by December 1st. Okay, well, you're the boss. That's the
Right.
date you gave.
He overrides everything.
Yeah.
But if I'm just looking at the authority to give them time. So it goes to the hearing officer just to, this was one of the questions I was going to ask anyway, just to affirm, modify, or reverse the decision for whatever reason. But then when they walk out the door, they once again have a time frame.
Yes.
That's either the original one or, so they have to go to the hearing officer within 10 days to say, I don't agree with what I've been written up for.
Correct.
Okay, so this is not you all sending them to hearing, this
No.
is just them appealing. So once that hearing is done, then you all are again in the driver's seat with an affirmed or modified order to
Right.
give them time and get it done.
And we will follow that order. That's not extensions are done. If the hearing officer gives them an extension or explains to them that you can have extensions, then we will follow that order. But if the hearing officer says December 1st, we're heading out as close to December 1st as we can to do it.
Okay, so the hearing officer might just put it back in your purview to grant the time, or might be specific.
I will give you an answer, yes. I don't think it's ever happened that way, but yes. The hearing officer has made decisions to say, I'm going to give you an extension and I'm going to bring you back next hearing, which means it sits there until next hearing. And in essence, she was giving an extension to get it done before we took action.
Okay. And does that system seem to work?
Yes.
Okay.
There's times I would say that I'd like to see it move faster, but that's why we have somebody besides me making a decision too, that if she does that, she has a reason to do it, and I'll support it, because it's not like it's all the time.
So what percentage of let's talk about sanitation at this point, how many of them go to a hearing?
I can't give you a percentage. Sanitation aren't a lot. It's usually housing.
Okay. And I was going to ask that just because in the early days, when I first was working with tenant, landlord, and community, and we didn't have a hearing officer. That was added much later in the game. And so it was the supervisor, it was the inspector, and then the supervisor, and then the department head made the final decision, basically served as that hearing officer, and we didn't have that extra level. So I just I wanted to see throughout this.
I'm happy with the extra level. I think it's nice checks and balances for our office.
Okay.
Because it would fall upon me, and then I would make the decision, but then to have a lawyer look at it and make that interpretation is not a bad thing.
Okay.
And when we're serving 30 warrants a week, and we need that support, and we're getting that support.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
No, Mike, if I may, I was just sitting here thinking about this. So you talked about sending letters out, housing letters out in the winter months to kind of get caught up. And I do get calls about that. They're like, they sent me this letter. They want me to paint my house. It's below zero and it's snowing. Is there anything on those letters that says, okay, again, I want to see.
This letter says, we see that your house is in violation. We understand it's winter. We're not going to open a case for 120 days. In 120 days, you should be contacting the inspector, setting up a game plan to paint this house, or get your house painted. So November 1, we put it out for 120 days. December 1, it's 90 days, and it just keeps dropping and dropping. And we write courtesy letters all the way through February, and we reduce the length that the courtesy is going to be given because we're trying to get it to spring, because we want them to start in the spring, because what I can tell you is in August, they're going to go, well, I'm still not done, and it's going to be too cold to finish. We go, we notified you in November. You can now go to court. You know, you should have worked with us when we offered to work with you. So, yeah, that's probably, we've been doing it for 2 years, and it's met with good success. But I get that phone call too. You expect, I go, please let's read your letter together. Oh.
Well, we go back a little ways too, because you
Yeah.
didn't always do it that way.
No.
When you first did it,
Yeah.
you did it in
No.
Monroe.
Yeah.
That turned everybody on their ear.
And no, that was good.
I could have learned some things.
Yeah, when I was reviewing what we were doing and I was getting the phone calls, I go, this doesn't seem to make sense, and it sets up failure for our constituent.
And time for you.
Yeah, so
was
to
just
paint in
that.
January is not a reasonable time to ask. So that's where, there are housing cases that we will do in November, December, January, and February that don't get a courtesy letter, and those are gonna be ones that have holes in the wall, holes in the windows. Those don't get the paint will be included. They need to reach out and talk to us. Because we don't really have a choice. When you pull up to a house and see it's missing a door, you got to cite it and say, get it fixed now. But when it comes to when we're just doing the traditional peeling paints and stuff, that's where all the courtesy letters are doing.
And we'll get back to this on exteriors. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, proceed on, I'm sorry.
Okay, so posting may be required when we serve somebody too. So when we send the certified letter, we also send a first-class letter to the owner. We do this out of policy, not out of law. And we do it because not everybody, one, signs for their certified letter, but two, if the first-class letter comes back, then we know that they probably didn't get notified. But if the first class letter doesn't come back, we've met all of our rules and all the things. So if a first class letter comes back saying undeliverable for whatever reason, we then take the notice, post it on the property, and then we start the 10 days from there. So we go put it right on the front door and tape it up and go from there. So all of that is internally because of what you all gave us when you helped us move up the speed of the ordinance. We then go back out and we re-inspect for compliance or non-compliance. If an inspector returns to the property again and confirms the violation still exists, we proceed with the case. If not, they close it out. No harm, no foul, no fine to the constituent. When we obtain a warrant on Thursday, the inspectors and staff complete and review all warrants that accumulated from the last Friday up to that Thursday and submit them to the prosecutor. On Friday, the prosecutor reviews all the warrants, returns them approved or denied with an explanation of what needs to be done if denied. I would say 1% or less of ours get denied. Monday, staff holds a warrant briefing and discusses all warrants for the week. And they work out how they're going to serve the warrants and which ones go first and which ones go last. Because some of our warrants are so large that they require 1 and even 2 40-foot roll-offs. So we had one a couple weeks ago that we did a Facebook Live that required forestry, the street department, and us to abate it. When you looked at the front of the house, you knew that there was a wood pile issue. You couldn't see the backyard. So when we went and did the backyard, we went, wow, we're in trouble. We need help. And so then forestry and street department stepped up without hesitation, brought in their grappling hooks and picked up the stuff. And we were even putting a boat in the junk. They'd scrapped out a boat and left it on the side of the house. So we strategically plan out all the warrants. And again, if we're at 30 warrants, that takes all week I'm running 7 inspectors. So it's 7 inspectors instead of 8. That's a lot of warrants to get done within the week, plus do all the C-click fixes, plus do all the proactive stuff. Tuesday, the judge, and it's a singular judge, reviews all the warrants, approves or declines and signs. He does a really good job of getting them back to us by 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a big deal because we only have 96 hours to serve these warrants. And then Tuesday through Friday, we serve the warrants as a team. So the abatement crew and the inspector and a supervisor would go out there, or just the abatement crew and an inspector. On a rare case, an inspector can do it on their own. They show up and grab that brush pile and throw it in their truck and move on. Again, we average 15 warrants a week, maybe 18, and we've had well over 30 warrants in a week. When we abate the property, most cases involve sanitation, require a warrant. Some cases are public service, as they are in public areas, like somebody dumping a mattress at First and Taylor today. That's just a public service. We're not going to cite the property owner that lives at that house because we know it's an illegal dump. So we just send out a crew to go clean it up, and we don't need a warrant for that. The abatement requires the inspector. This is how many people it takes. It requires the inspector to go to that abatement, the abatement team, the inmate crews, and on many of them, a supervisor. Anyone that's large and requires a roll-off, any of them that we foresee having an issue with the people living there, a supervisor is going to go to. And ideally, I'd like to have a supervisor at every single warrant. But in reality, when you have 30 and you got one field inspector, he's not getting to every single warrant. All items seized in the abatement are taken to the landfill by the abatement crew. We don't keep anything. We don't call anything of value, so we don't keep scrap metal. We don't do that because if we did, we're taking something of value. And if you look at our larger abatements, which require a 40-foot roll-off, from 2013 to 2015, so 3 years, they did 47 roll-offs. From 2016 to 2018, when we started doing this, we're up to 177 roll-offs. So we got over 3 times the amount of roll-offs going there and 3 times the amount of cases that we're serving warrants on. We do not keep any items that we remove from the property.
Do you take photos each time?
Absolutely. Some cases have 200 photos.
Okay.
So
before and after,
we,
right?
No, so
Well, we had one where the person said they took a ladder that was a good quality ladder, and in fact, they had a photo of it, and we ended up getting it back.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
And
the
I
ladder.
assumed from that you
Yes,
always
that's
took
exactly
something
why too.
kinda
'cause
cover
we
your
went
backs
through
and
that
so on.
and reached out right away and said, hey, have you thrown everything? Well, we haven't got everything thrown away yet. What about that ladder? Well, that ladder's broken. What's broken on it? and it was a minor break. And I said, no, man, we got to get this ladder back to this guy. So that's why we have 10,000 cases on average, I don't know, and we take an average of 40 pictures.
That's just good for us to know when we get these, you know, they took my stuff.
Yeah, because we take a lot of stuff, and we take stuff that people believe is valuable, and it is probably of value to them. A scrapper that collects 500 pounds of scrap metal but doesn't want to take it to the scrap yard because the price of metal is low, so he's accumulating and accumulating and accumulating it until the price of metal goes up. When we go and take his metal and throw it in the dump, he said, you know, you just took hundreds of dollars for me. So it is of value to him, but it's also junk and it's scrap that can't be on the property. So that's why we take, if we have a big abatement, there's sometimes over 100, 120 photos taken. And if the supervisor's on scene, we try to get a picture of everything that the abatement crew takes and throws into the truck. It's not always possible, but we try to. And that's why with that ladder, we were able to, I was going through, oh, wait a minute, what is this? But all the other things he claimed were of value, we're going, no, everything's rotten and destroyed. So the ladder was going to the trash. We just got it out before it got there. So, yeah. So where was I?
We don't keep anything of value.
Yeah.
Yeah, the property.
Okay.
is your last-
So then we bill the owner. Once the abatement's completed, the abatement crew, the team that went out and did it, they actually hop on MyGov that day. They submit all the bills and all the totals for the truck time, the labor time, all the fees. You have an administrative fee, an administrative penalty fee. You have all sorts of different fees that get all added in, and it gets sent right to staff. Staff knows the very next day to send the bill out, so it goes really fast.
Does that include forestry's time and anybody that's out there on the job?
No. Their time hasn't been added in. We rarely use forestry, but when we do, and then forestry, I can't answer for them, but I can tell you that they don't send bills like this at this time, but I know that I've talked to WPC, and they're working up some codes and ordinances and software to start billing.
Okay.
Because a lot of times they were calling us going, well, we don't know how to bill, would you help us? So we've been helping them.
Okay.
So, that 30
Is forestry under WPC, or that's two different?
No, two different things. Just I happened to be talking to them. I jumped because that was one of them that I called and said, look, we got an issue. Example, dumping grease into the drain system. It's not a code violation, that's a WPC violation.
Absolutely.
It's almost impossible to catch that person, but if they catch him,
Sometimes
they need to know how to prosecute him. And so that's what they're working on, saying, look, when we have things that are costing us, we need to do it. And they're doing a pretty good job of really hammering that down. We've worked with them, because one of the things we don't want is working in silos and doing our own thing. So we worked with them to help them get that.
But when forestry does it, it's at this point still complimentary, if you will.
I don't want to speak for them. I don't know if they've changed their policy.
Well, if they were going to bill it, they'd probably bill it through you.
No.
And so
They
you're not keeping track.
Yeah, I don't know if they're billing themselves or not. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if they've started a process to bill or not. But forestry, yeah, normally for us, they come out and they hook us up and help us without billing us.
How often do they do that?
Not very often. That street department, forestry, that was one in this year.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But they're street department on 3rd Street, so the street department twice this year that I know of. But they're always willing to work with us and do it. So I can remember two. Has there been more with the amount of warrants we do? I don't want to tell you there hasn't been more. But I know of two for sure, because usually I'm involved in making that request.
So you're tracking your own staff crews as well as inmate crews then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't track the inmate crew's workload. That's going to come from somebody else in our division. It doesn't go on MyGov or in my office. They work through Rhonda Clemens and Monique. They then give them to us for us to use them the way that we need to use them, because we pay for them out of our budget. So we pay for them out of our budget, but they're supervised from Monique.
Well, when we bill people for the abatement costs, we're supposedly billing them for what our costs were.
Correct.
So we're billing for the inmate crew time, or we are not billing for the inmate crew
Yes.
time?
I'll have to answer you later
Okay.
for sure exactly how that. I mean, we bill for time. I got to look at what time it is.
I'm interested in this overall, and so, it
Sure.
could make some kind of blanket questions, but the issue of whether how much we're spending and how much we're getting back, and who's doing that work.
I got you. Yeah. I can't give you a straight answer. I can. in the future.
I appreciate it, that's fine.
Yeah.
We've got time.
And then, so we're going through this. I got to catch back up where we were. 31 days, admin staff will review it, and if payment hasn't been made, a final notice will be given to the owner, giving them 10 more days to comply. If they don't, then what we do is we send it to collections and taxes. If somebody calls us and says, I can't pay it all, we set up a payment plan, and as long as they make payments, we don't send it to collections. And then this is, to give you an idea, here is a work process flow chart for just a sanitation case, if it lets me do it. It did earlier. Just to give you how many steps take place on a simple sanitation case. I can do it so you can read every single one if you would like, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the massive amount of things that take place. Because when I looked at it before I got involved in this job, I said, how hard is it to do a sanitation case? Show up, tell them to clean it, go clean it. You know, it's not. That is a very lengthy process to walk through to get a case done. So I just wanted to, I gave a copy of that in your PowerPoint. It'll probably be the next page. But that way you could see where we were with that.
Mike, and as I understand it, you guys specifically went in and looked at this process and tried to streamline it so that you tried to reduce the number of times.
Oh, that is
it had to be
streamlined.
touched.
That was
understand.
torn apart.
This is the streamlined
Yes.
version.
Yeah, no, I forgot.
It is.
I'm going to give you a wrong number, but it was like 100 different steps we were able to eliminate. They're all little steps that may have only taken a tenth of a second or a second, but you're looking going, why are we doing it and how are we doing it? So I don't remember what the number was, but that's what that RPI process we did. We went through and we chose sanitation because the housing, the vehicles, the graffiti, all follow the same process when it comes to notification and how we go about doing it. So, but sanitation encompasses it all, shy of how housing go over to district court or municipal court. So we chose sanitation to do it because we were able to then incorporate that into all of our other types of violations. If we had done something like, say, weeds has a different notification process, and then we wouldn't have been able to get as deep down into the cleanup of that. Yes.
Before you go, you back to bills.
Okay.
I think I understand it, but a refresher for all of us would be good in terms of, you say that you send a bill to the owner and then if they don't pay, it gets basically split to collections and to taxes. Could you explain that? And also, do you ever send any of these to court for prosecution?
Sanitation case, we don't send to court. We send for bills. It gets split because of how state law says what you can put on taxes. I'm going to give you the wrong thing, like fines and fees can't be put on taxes, but the abatement costs can, the truck costs can, and things like that. So that gets put on taxes, and then collections gets a whole nice little thing. So collections goes after the full thing. If they pay collections, we clear it off, we clear the taxes for them. If they just pay the taxes, then collections still has money sitting there outstanding.
Just so everybody knew that the bill was a sandwich.
Yeah, and we can't put everything that we do on the taxes, according to laws, tax laws. Okay?
And why is it that none of these go to court?
Because this is the process that we use for sanitation, that we bill them, that it's not a criminal charge. If it was a criminal charge, it wouldn't be a bill.
Well, the way that the code is set up, you can do both. Do you ever, code also provides for double fees for chronic offenders. Do you assess the double fees
So for
or multiples, I guess?
Yes, it'd be
based
the
on-
administrative fee. When it's a second occurrence, it doubles.
Uh-huh. And are you
Yes,
doing
oh
that?
yeah, absolutely. If we don't, and I find it, I go, why didn't we double this fee? And I
Okay.
go, well, we didn't realize it was a second case or whatever, and just a clerical error.
Okay.
So they're usually always double the fees.
So you are doing the multiples, but they're not going to court?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So these are just some pictures and examples of some of the sanitation. And even though you go, oh, that looks pretty out of control, we don't always see that. These are backyards. So we don't see these until a neighbor calls us and says, look, I'm sick of my neighbor doing what they're doing. Those tires, we don't quite understand why people do it, but they go and they collect tires and they fill their entire backyard with tires until the neighbor calls and goes, I can't come outside for mosquitoes. And we show up, and I think we took 1,500 tires from one house. And, you know, I don't know, my assumption is he's going to the tire store saying, look, I'll only charge you $1. And the tire store's going, well, I pay $2 to the guy that picks them up here. And so then he, you know, this guy made $1,000 on the tires, but then he put them in his backyard. Many of these cases we go back and back and back for. When we lift up our rodent harborage, this is what we find all the time. I'm not a big fan of snakes, but because of this job, wearing gloves, and I'm not that concerned anymore with them, because I haven't come across a rattlesnake or something that looked like it could kill me. But it does scare you quite a bit when you lift something up and a pack rat or a snake goes flying. Well, a snake doesn't fly, but a pack rat goes running between your legs, or there's a snake. And this is why there's an issue with rodent harborage, because people usually put this stuff at the outskirts of their property, which means it's at their neighbor's property too. So all these rats and all these snakes, they don't know the property line. So they're going over to the neighbor's house and ruining the neighbor's time when the neighbor's maintaining their property. Both those pictures are repeat violators. Dozens of times we've been to both those houses. The one on the right, we haven't been there dozens, but we've still been there 6 or more times and had to do double roll-offs and 40-foot roll-offs and towed 5 or 6 cars off of the property. That we'll find cars inside that stuff. He's slowing down at least because we've done it so many times. But when you asked about people paying their bills, they're not paying them. So their taxes are sky high because it's sitting on their taxes. What's going to happen to that house? I don't know.
Well, it's been a few years. Did they pay their taxes?
No. So sooner or later, they won't have the house, right?
We had one person whom you can think of who just considered it running a tab with the city.
Right.
That it was a convenience for us.
All right. This is, I've had to edit this video because the language in the video is extremely colorful.
Oh, wow.
So you're going to
That's
get
all right.
if I can find my mouse.
I think we're all adults here, right?
And
Too late.
well, I think it's on TV too. So, and then all the inmate, my abatement crew, all the faces are blurred out. But this is. Showed you what the inspectors go through.
Oh, yeah.
When we're serving 30 warrants a week, there are multiple warrants where the people say, get off my property, I'm going to do this type of harm to you. Yeah. The training the inspectors have is, no problem, we'll just go down the street and wait for the police to show up. So it's critical that the police, which have always been really good to us, they show up and they help us serve warrants. When we have that Monday meeting, we decide which ones we believe will need a warrant, and then we call in advance and let the police know, look, on these warrants at these times, we're going to have warrants. If we get to a house and someone comes out on their porch and says, get off my property, we get off the property, we call the police, and we wait for the police to show up before we serve the warrant. That turns into a time-consuming delay because if the police are holding calls or they got something bigger going on, we can be sitting there for a couple hours waiting for the police. Not a fault of the police. That's just reality of manpower and stuff. So when we're talking about the massive amount of warrants that we're serving and the time it takes to serve these, you can see that it can really add up. Right of entry is limited. We have to have permission to be on somebody's property, or we have to have access by a neighbor. A neighbor has to allow us on the property to see it. We all know that searches on private residence are considered unreasonable and violate the Fourth Amendment rights without having our warrant. And interests of the public health and safety welfare have to outweigh individual rights to privacy in this. So that's where our warrants come from.
So he was mad because we abated his property? Is that why he was mad? Are we?
His family member's property. He doesn't live there.
Oh, his family members.
Yeah, he doesn't live there. So yeah, that's what, yeah, but we have those all the time.
Oh, no, I understand.
But we happened to, one of my inspectors happened to video record that one. Now, we know the police video record them, but we're not going to use police evidence to demonstrate to you.
Right.
But our inspector just happened to have his little pad out and went, I think this might be worth recording. So he recorded it. You can see it. You can see how important it is that we had that support from law enforcement, because without that, that would have been us out there. And he was too close to that bobcat. Ideally, you would like to have seen him removed away from that bobcat, but then those are how things turn ugly, where they go, why did you use that much force when you could have solved it a different way? So,
Right.
Those are just tough.
Either now or sometime as we go through this process, this right of entry thing, the question about being able to view inside somebody's fence, what you do about that if the items are sheltered, and then the issue that's kind of new about using drones, I'd like to see us address.
I mean, if I can see it, I'm tall. They'll call me and say, Mike, come on over, and I can stand and look over the fence. You can see through a fence. It's real tough when we try to get evidence through the planks of a fence, because all you see is fence and a line. But with your naked eye, if you're standing on public access and you can see.
And that's okay?
Yeah, you just have to be able to articulate it in the warrant why you saw it, what you saw.
Okay, so the issue of, there was a long time where the inspectors would say to the violators, well, if it's behind a fence, I can't write it off. And so people would put up these makeshift fences, and it was just a mess. But, and I thought even more recently that the fences, maybe because of what people were talking about, were still a barrier for you all to write up.
They are a barrier. A fence can hide a lot, and we won't know unless we're told about the violation. If it's behind a fence, we're not walking up and down each street and looking at each fence.
I understand that, but
So-
if you know, or you've been advised, or obviously, as you said earlier, if somebody's got the rodent harborage up against the fence, and therefore all the rodents are going under the fence to the neighbors, or whatever it is. So how big of a problem have you been able to overcome the issue of fences pretty much these days, or not?
The concealment will always be a problem. Do I give my inspectors the authority to use everything that they can do legally to obtain that visual? Yes, I do. When we started, we weren't using neighbor's property. We forced the neighbor to sign a waiver to allow us on their property. We're not violating the neighbor's right going on their property.
Right.
And in a way, I felt that was a form of intimidation to the neighbor. And I said, why are we doing this? Just get the neighbor's permission and go on the property. But I'd recommend you get the neighbor's permission, because you may find out the guy owns the neighboring house and you're on his property. Or the neighbor's best friends with him and doesn't want you on the property. So we need the neighbor's permission to do it. Heck, we got people that allow us in their house, and we stand in their second-story bathroom and take the pictures. And we do have to hold a conversation with them going, hey, if this person appeals it or asks to see the pictures, they're going to know they came from your second-story bathroom, and you've got to deal with your neighbor.
But the signing was a barrier.
Yes, and so I eliminated that as soon as I got in position. So I felt very uncomfortable with it.
Well, at one point, people were thinking they could just hold like a stick up, the
Like a selfie
selfie
stick?
sticks up, and at one point, the word was, no, they couldn't do that.
We're not, I'm not going to tell you we can't. I'm going to tell you that is not our practice, or.
Well, not everybody's as tall as Mike.
They call me out there. And also, or the advice from legal staff of doing that. Drones could probably be a consideration. I don't know if we want to go there to look into people's properties to catch them for a code violation. I'm not telling you no. I'm just telling you we really got to think about it. And the amount of cases that we're putting out already It's not like we're hard pressed or we can't find enough cases.
Well, and we'll get to exteriors later, but that's come up in the past about roofs. I mean, it hasn't seemed quite right that one that you can see the roof because of its pitch from the truck gets written up, but the one that's got a flat roof doesn't.
Absolutely.
And
I
so-
know a specific property. We're well aware of it. Yeah, I got
Been
you.
more than one, but that
Yes.
one in particular.
Yes.
I want to make us aware of the time. We've got about 14 minutes. Mike, I do want you to finish your presentation, please. Go ahead. Karen,
It'll
if we could just hold
it'll
our
be done
questions
pretty
for.
quick.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think 2 or 3 slides. So simplified on best case scenario, we don't need to go into all those, but sanitation's what's in the topic. It takes 21 days from us citing to serving the warrant. That's from 45 days before you guys change the ordinance. So all of those were significantly impacted from the ordinance change at the start of the year, and we haven't had much negative feedback of the current ordinance. If anything, it's people that would have finally got it done before those 45 days aren't get, you know, they don't get it because we're at the warrant stage at 21 or whatever. So we have a few more warrants that we probably wouldn't have to have if it was longer, but it sped it up. And then these are the efforts we've done to reduce abatements and assist the public. We drafted a sample letter with the Behavioral Insights team, and I think I talked to you about this all before, but the letter was supposed to psychologically encourage the people to comply, and psychiatrists and stuff wrote the letter and we had a 0.005% difference in compliance. I still think our letters could be better than they are. But when we wrote the letter, trying to use psychological means to get them to comply, it didn't make a difference. I sent postcards out for every violator in 2018 on weeds last year saying, please be a team member with the city of Topeka and help us help you by mowing your lawn. I'm not sure it helped because we had a whole lot of weeds this year. But what I did get is I didn't get the phone calls of, why are you nailing me? When we mowed their lawns, they went, you know, I was forewarned.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a lot of those. We do door hangers as warrants approach when we feel it's appropriate, or if we go, we got to get them to comply and they're not doing it. We provide the inspector's name and phone number on the violation notice. We're willing to go out to the property and walk the property with the owner and explain to them what they need to get done, something that wasn't being done when I started and said we were too busy, we don't have time to do that. You know what the violation is, fix your violation. We will go out and we will stand there and explain what it is. We've placed the SOPs online, as you all asked. We have an online action center where you can look up cases throughout your neighborhood and even receive an email telling you what your neighborhood or your zone, how many cases are going on. We attend over 100 public meetings per year discussing all this. We've done educational videos through Channel 4 and also do Facebook Live once a month with Habitat for Humanity, talking about code violations and what you need to address those code violations, or what rights you have as a tenant if those code violations are occurring in your property, because a lot of them we're doing now are inside. So we'll talk about electrical outlets or whatever, and I'll say, hey, let your landlord know there's a violation. If they blow you off, please call us. We give them the information. We've done 4 team-up to cleanups, which have been really successful, and people have been very pleased with them. And we do walk and talks in the neighborhood. And I forgot one more that I didn't put on there that I wrote down.
It's all right.
But these are the things, so we're trying to educate the public. We're trying to reach out to the public, let them know, you know, the things that they can do to stop this. I receive phone calls all the time of the I didn't knows. Walking through, explain it to them. The majority of the I didn't knows want to not know. They've already had multiple violations, already had an inspector to their house explaining what the problem is. There are people that need help, and there are people that need a quality explanation, and we're happy to do that for them. So you got through my slide presentation.
Yes. Yes, I wasn't gonna.
I wanted to see one more slide. The one
There's one more.
after that guy backed up in that truck and hit that property and left, the slide of the officer making the stop.
Oh, I did not have that one.
Accident.
They ended up arresting him. I know
Right.
that.
Well, I didn't say that, Mr. Padilla. You
It's
just
not
didn't-
there.
you just- I know.
But I know what comes after that. You're
Right.
not gonna have those officers stand there and say, oh, well,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna get
No,
stopped.
they went and found him.
Yeah.
That was a
And then
violation. Huh?
the actual last slide, and I don't need to go through it all, but you have it. That is the week of a life of a property maintenance inspector. You know, and I do know that people go, well, what do they do besides go out and write citations? They do a lot. They do a
Don't ask
lot.
that in District 1.
Yeah. They do a lot, and it's all been organized. It's all been, we've created the most efficient, constantly create more efficiency with this, saying what can we do faster, better, and more thoroughly. And that's where we are right now with it. I think Thursday might say we have an all-staff meeting. We moved the all-staff meeting to Mondays. I guess I didn't realize it when I put it on there. We moved it to Mondays to be more efficient, because on Thursdays they're serving their warrants, et cetera. Monday they're coming in fresh, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they don't have to jump on it right away. They already had that warrant briefing, so they do their warrant briefing. We move immediately to an all-staff meeting, and we do our staff meeting then. So that was something that made it more efficient and kept the inspectors on the street longer. So that's the only thing I see that's changed there.
Do you have any comments,
My
questions?
compliments. I like the way you've laid it out to show how your time is spent in trying to address the sheer volume of the issues that the department has to deal with. You guys take a hit a lot. Yeah, I know from being at the police department, code enforcement has gone through a lot of changes, you know, a lot of hats, served under different people. And this looks like the most comprehensive approach to the issue that will be here forever, but at least we're taking an attack on it that makes sense.
And I could see support from the top of this city administration all the way through that may or may not have been here prior at different places, or even when I first started. You know, when I left the police department and came over here, that every department we are supposed to work with takes this serious and works with us. And it wouldn't have been, it can't be successful without that.
Karen, do you have any closing comments, remarks?
Well, I am,
We've got
not at this
about,
point. The
9
question would
minutes.
be, I mean, I thought we were going to talk about general policies and procedures, so I prepared in that way. It doesn't matter to me how we go through it, but what do we want to do next? This is a lot of information for us, and so do we send questions to them and then do a follow-up on this one and start a new one next time?
Yes.
Or where are we at?
yes. I want us to take this. Liz, if you would make sure that all of our council members have a copy of this, whether via email or hard copy, I don't care. If you could put that out there to everybody, and then, or the link, and also the link to the meeting. And I want you to think about what you've seen today and any questions that you might want to come back to Mike with. We'll start there with just a follow-up with questions. I know I wanted the letters or anything you'd like to see. And then at our next meeting, did you have something else next?
No, we're waiting on guidance from you.
Waiting
What
on
I mean,
us? What'd you have, Karen?
The next subject in the line is weeds.
Yep.
Okay.
Weeds, so
You
vehicle.
want him to queue up weeds?
Vehicle graffiti have the same step process. They're
Okay.
almost the exact same. I can give you a presentation on vehicles and graffiti. It's almost going to be all the same.
If
shy of
you
some
have
nifty
two
stuff.
that you can put together, that's fine. We'll do
And then,
that.
but weeds is a unique thing of how it's interpreted and how we notify.
Okay, so
weeds
we'll
would be
do
awesome.
weeds
Next in the order of their
We'll,
vote.
we'll do weeds next, at our next meeting.
Okay.
Quick clarification. Were we going to, there was some discussion at first that there might be input. I see two people from the Landlord Association have been here through this.
Oh,
and
I'm so sorry.
And the NIAs as well. Were we going to throw it open for anybody to send us questions to make sure they
Yes.
get considered?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you ladies have any questions with what's been mentioned today, or do you want to follow up with those questions at our next meeting? No? Yes? You're good? Okay, all right,
Marcia?
okay. Yeah, we'll do that. Any questions that we have, we'll make sure that gets,
And just to make sure, you're asking for a letter, a courtesy letter, and you want the cost, if we're billing for the cost of the inmates.
Let me go back to the questions I had and give you, it might be an
Okay.
exact question, but so that you're not chasing one piece and I
No,
ask you something else.
I appreciate that.
I want the courtesy letter and the letter. Is the letter, and are they both one and the same?
Oh, completely different.
And the
Okay.
door hanger too,
And
maybe just all
yeah,
the.
I would like that. And I would just like to say, Mike, thank you for today. I learned a lot today.
Good.
And I've been here for a little bit, but I've learned a lot today. And I think I continuously say this, and I'll say it to the city manager, I think it's just educating, not only us, I'll be the first to say, but the public as well. Because I believe that they think we're still in the same air as the paper trail that goes in the file, that gets lost, that doesn't get wrote up. And that I think if we do a presentation, like I said before, this would be great to show that we have reminders and things are being popped up. Anything can happen within the system, but that was I'm gonna look for those letters and I'm gonna wait for my calls.
Okay.
Be like, you know what, let's do this. So,
Well, and
but thank you.
I will tell you too, that one of the things I've got in there, but I'll throw it out here now, is that I'm really interested, you've done the RPI on this process for sanitation, but if there have been observations or conversations, I don't know if you all even keep a log, about improvements that staff has suggested, I'm interested in hearing those as well. And all of that as kind of part and parcel of, what do we want this town to look like in a year? What do we want it to look like in 5 years? Where are we going with this? Because ideally, we know it kind of sank down to being in a pretty bad situation. But if we're trying to work our way, I would hope that we're trying to work our way out of it. There's always going to be some chronic repeaters, we know that. But kind of where are we going with this? And do we have a vision and a time frame with that for all of them? But
Yeah, that'll be a tough question because I believe that where we want to be in a city is going to be the norms and the expectations of our community and every department and every citizen. Because we can go out and cite and we can use the government to cite violations, but if the attitude is that I'm okay to live with a sanitation issue, we're going to continue to have that.
that's why I'm raising the issue, because I think it makes a difference.
The norms and expectations of this community need to be raised when it comes to these issues. When I'm at meetings, I tell the people, expect what you tolerate and don't tolerate it. If you're going to let your neighbor live like that and you don't call us, don't be shocked when it's the next neighbor and the one back there as well.
Yeah.
We will take your call. We will address your issue. We are happy to do it. That's what you've hired us to do. So expect what you tolerate.
All right, I'd like to thank you. Thank you again. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Liz, did you put this together?